my name is Lucy, and I'm here today to talk about the future of animated cutscenes and cinematics within gaming. The film industry and the video game industry's storytelling has been rapidly blurring lines. Even when video games started to become big and popular in the 80s, games like Metal Gear were leading in innovating and introducing cutscenes to their games. As I mentioned before, Metal Gear Solid was one of the first games to hold video game cinematics. It was the first of its kind to introduce storytelling that wasn't built into the core gameplay. And as years went on and technology improved, cutscenes became better in quality and helped popularize cutscenes with developers. With technology only increasing storage sizes, the accessibility of cutscenes, and good quality cutscenes at that, were quite prominent, especially in the late 2000s and early teens. Several AAA games that were released during the 2010s, such as The Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto, were massively known for their cutscenes and cinematics. Within the hundreds of hours of gameplay sits almost 5 massive hours of cutscenes. Throughout that entire scene, the camera is placed within view of what you would be seeing if you were standing in the room. It's always at eye level. And if it's not, it's where you're seated. At a bar, or stood at the bar, or even from a chair in the back of the room. There's always somewhere that makes you feel like you're involved. While some would agree that cinematics have helped improve the quality of storytelling within video games, some would disagree, saying that the practice of video game cinematics has brought lazy gameplay. They can make players zone out, can make for an annoying experience. One gaming category that has grown over the last decade is the choice narrative, being able to give players the individual choice to tell their own story. Some of the most amazing iconic examples of this is The Wolf Among Us, Detroit Become Human, Until Dawn, and the newest Baldur's Gate 3. Each of these games were revolutionary as they came out. Let's take Detroit Become Human. The theme was all about race, due to the androids being the race. The game follows 3 main protagonists, all being androids of cyberlife, following Kara and Marcus, who go rogue from their functioning code and become free thinkers, while Connor, the cop android, is sent to find them. Throughout all these storylines, majority of this game is cinematics with QuickTime events. QuickTime events are typical, specifically because they keep the player engaged and give them consequences if you do fail them. While giving players the opportunity to pick their own story, there are always opportunities to discuss about morals. Each action has a consequence, and those consequences will eventually add up. One of the biggest consequences at the start of the game is you can actually miss a third of the storytelling within Detroit Become Human, all because you killed Kara off first. And although this is not intentional for the game, they wanted to give players the option and ability to be able to do this, which is respectable. Video games even now are pushing the limits and going even further into film and television. Stories from the video games were never really told on the big screen, and if they were, they usually underperformed and made Hollywood scared to even pick them. In the early 2010s, games were getting bigger, and because of the cinematics happening within them, they were becoming more popular for them. Video games weren't even necessarily having cutscenes within their games. Games such as League of Legends and Overwatch began making cinematics and music videos outside of their respective games. Both of these games' core gameplay doesn't actually include any story narrative apart from the characters themselves and the world they surround themselves in. And so narrative stuff is usually kept outside of the game, for cinematics, books, comics, or every other medium. Both League and Overwatch producing some of the most watched cinematics on YouTube. The most famous 8-minute cinematic gaining 48 million views on YouTube alone. After the release of Ready Player One, it seemed to kick off a new era of video game adaptations, especially within Hollywood. The success of a film based on video games was seen as a new beginning, and larger game franchises started to take note. Narratives within existing franchises such as Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario Bros. Have seen massive success due to their cinematic films being released to the big screen. And even more success in the TV scene, with Arcane and The Last of Us being some of the biggest TV series of this coming decade. Arcane's success can be linked back to the show's studio, Fortiche, making some of the most beautiful cinematics in animation. And The Last of Us being a live-action version of the same name game, bringing the beloved characters of Joel and Ellie to life, to a brand new audience that wouldn't usually watch traditional animated films or TV shows. The video game industry has grown a lot since its early days. Cinematics are no longer pixelated dialogue, and cinematics could be considered full-length feature films. New genres have formed as a result of in-game cutscenes, and new ways to engage players have only just started. The use of in-game cutscenes was also accelerated by the fact that the genre of choice-based video games saw players being able to choose their film for the first time. And with the rise of all of these great quality cinematics, has brought a new life to them outside of video games, with adaptations of straight-up TV shows and films helping retell old stories and create new ones from existing characters and worlds. The cutscenes are here to stay for the foreseeable future. Introduction of VR, the space could change, but with first-person experiences still on their way in. However, with the introduction of VR, the space is due to change, especially when players want to start experiencing more first-person ways of enjoying VR. However, until VR becomes more affordable and more compatible with players who feel more familiar with wearing a headset, cinematics will continue to dominate narratives and campaigns within video games, TVs, and film.